So, I went to Harvard, but I didn't go to Harvard. You know what I mean? Well, hello, and welcome back to the Museum Lovers Museum Reviews. My name is Gianna. I'm a museum professional, and I love museums. And the goal of my channel is to share the diverse missions and communities that museums serve through film and media. So I hope you join me on this journey, and don't forget to subscribe. Today, we are visiting the Harvard Natural History Museum, located, of course, in Harvard, Massachusetts, the university.
The Harvard Natural History Museum as we know it today was founded in 1998 as a culmination of Harvard's three research museums: the Herbaria, the Mineralogical and Geological Museum, and the Museum of Comparative Zoology. The herbarium collection contains over 5 million specimens in the university's collection. The mineral and fossil collection dates back to 1784, making it the oldest in the country. And the Museum of Comparative Zoology started collecting in 1859, with the present-day museum holding 21 million specimens in 9 departments, a trio of joy for anyone who loves both flora and fauna. First things first, we need to visit their website to get tickets. Now, when I first got to their website, I noticed it was pretty minimalist and I thought that was pretty cool, but I was still kind of confused about where to go, so my initial museum professional instincts took me to the visit page, where there was a lot of information. So, quick note, while I am recording this, I visited the museum a week prior. However, when I went to reserve my ticket, instead of saying reserve your spot, it said reserve your free spot, which I thought was a little bit confusing because then I was under the impression that tickets were free. But I feel that it is good for Harvard for fixing that and making that a little more clear. The reservation is free, but tickets are not. So by changing that language really quick, they're able to make the process a little more clearer. So good on you, Harvard. Then we're going to go actually reserve our spot. We have to read through some of their COVID policies, the show, no, go, in that order, I think. I don't remember. I'm in the studio right now recording. Haha. But once we do that and scroll to the bottom, we hit reserve. We'll pick a day, a time, and then we will check out. When we get to the museum, we check in by showing our reservation, ID, and vaccine cards at the desk. This is also where you will pay. Then it's time to hit the galleries.
So, the museum itself is only located on the 3rd floor of the building, and you can get reciprocal access to neighboring museums with a ticket to the Harvard Natural History Museum. This includes the Peabody Museum of Archaeology and the Harvard Museum of Middle Eastern History. So you may think that a museum located on the 3rd floor of one building would be pretty small. However, it's actually quite vast. I didn't feel like I was in the 3rd floor of a building. I felt like I was in a museum, which I imagine is the goal of the setup here. So, with that in mind, we're going to go up the stairs from the ticketing booth, and we are going to continue our visit. So the first stop on my trip was the evolution room, which had a lot of great comparative pieces. You could see a chimp skeleton right next door to a human skeleton, and there were glass cases full of different kinds of animals, a lot of invertebrate beetles, bats, birds, things that you could actually compare with the different species and see sort of how evolution takes place. And then right next door to there is a screening room featuring glass creatures, and you'll see glass is going to be kind of a theme for this video because there are a lot of glass things in this museum. So, sea creatures in glass was really unique and amazing. I am a big fan of nudibranchs, so they had a lot of cute glass nudibranchs, cute glass jellies. Everything was really, really detailed, and I almost thought I was looking at real specimens, and it just hit me several times that day that these things were made out of glass. It was quite impressive. And then from there, I went to the room with microbial life. Now, microbial life had these little interpretive screens where you could press buttons and watch videos, and there was this big model kitchen right in the middle of the room, and it talked about bacteria in the kitchen. Something fascinating that I learned was that the junky smell that comes from your trash is the same bacteria that naturally breaks down things in a compost pile. So I guess the smell means it's working. The stink means it's working. And from microbial life, I kind of just continued on into the sort of next section, which was Lily Simonson's painting of the deep. There were these sort of blue ultraviolet lights above my head, and I could hear like ocean sounds all around me. So Lily Simonson, So Lily Simonson is a marine biologist, and she was inspired to paint some of these amazing creatures throughout her journey. And I gotta admit, I felt really kind of trippy while I was in there. And I also liked that it was sort of art and science put together. I'm always a big fan of museums taking the interdisciplinary approach, which I think Harvard Natural History does very well with the botanical, the animal, the microbial life, archaeology. You know, it all kind of comes together really well. If you're a museum lover and you love to learn about different sort of sciences, I think this museum would definitely be a really fun spot. And then, of course, from there we get into my favorite things, because I went to school for zoology. So we got into the dinosaurs, which would be sure to please any child, believe me. If you like dinosaurs, you will enjoy the Harvard Natural History Museums. It also leaves me a great opportunity to do this.
Mastodon,
Pterosaur!
Triceratops,
Bengal tiger!
Pliosaurus.
Now from there we continue forward to the comparative zoology side of things. So the rooms, I believe, are laid out between regions of the world. Africa, Asia, the ocean, I guess the ocean's a geographic location? I don't know. Sound off. Is the ocean a geographic location? Either way, they had dioramas in the ocean section that actually made it look like these creatures were in water when in fact they were all stuffed, so to say. So there was a kind of a stark difference between these comparative zoology rooms. Some of them were really just crammed in there with specimens because I guess they have so many. But like the Asia, Central South America, the Africa rooms, everything was really crammed in there. It was amazing, also kind of overwhelming. Versus the marine life and the New England forest, which actually took care to create an environment where you would see these animals like the moose in the forest, the beaver by the dam, the fish in the water. You know, there was some care put into those exhibits, and then the other rooms were just animals everywhere. So much so, and I mean they were in there tight. There were whales on the ceiling. I kid you not. There were whales on the ceiling. One whale in particular, and I believe it was a kind of baleen whale, I don't remember which one specifically, it was so big that they created a glass barrier that actually sort of, I want to say, encroached onto the platform where visitors would walk around on the second level. Like, it was that big, and it was just crammed in there that they made the decision to put a shield around the whale because the room was so small. So that I thought was kind of hilarious, but it was really cool that you could get up on the level of these really giant animals. I know there's one whale skeleton at the New England Aquarium, but the Harvard Natural History Museum has 3. And then after that, they also had the Great Mammal Hall, and they had the Hall of Birds. I really like the hummingbird exhibit because you could really look at each teeny weeny tiny little hummingbird and see like their distinct differences and how those sort of traits between species really radiate between hummingbirds as a whole. It was really, really cool. So the Great Mammal Hall and the Birds of the World was on the balcony. And then from there, it's a dead end. There was a classroom up there. So after that, I went back down the stairs, through everything again. And then as I was exiting towards the glass flowers, we went through the room of arthropods where they had some live animals. We saw a whip scorpion. We saw a rosy tarantula. We saw a big hairy scorpion. So it was really cool to see some live animals in that as well. I have a particularly special attachment to bugs because I used to work with butterflies and thorny devils at the Museum of Science years ago before the big you-know-what happened. Not gonna say it. But it was nice to see all these specimens and jars, everything from not just bugs, but arthropods that are crustaceans as well. Some of you might be a little creeped out. It's very mad science-y. to see specimens in jars, but then again, I was surrounded by that in college. I'm used to it. So next we went to the glass flowers exhibit, which is like a big deal. It was the first thing I saw when I got there, but I kind of wanted to save that for later. So at this point my camera battery died, so apologies, you might see a very slight change in quality here. So the glass flowers were created for Harvard students so they could learn about botany. So instead of having everybody, I guess, cram around a slide on a microscope, this family, and I've got it on my info sheet here. There was an info sheet at the end of the exhibit where you could check this out. So let's see. These glass flowers were made by the Blaschkas in Horsterwitz, Germany. Now these two gentlemen, who were father and son, were contracted by Harvard to create these models so that students could get an up-close look at botany and learn about parts of a flower without having to use a microscope. And I will be fully honest, dead serious, thought these things were real when I first moved in to the exhibit. I mean, it was amazing. And there was also a work table where you could see some of the materials that the Blaschkas would have used in order to make these. So that was really cool. And it was just everything around me. It was different species. Most of them were tropical things you probably wouldn't find in New England, but I absolutely loved them. The realism blew my mind. It was like looking at art and science all at once, and it was very informative too. So I could say without question, I think the glass flowers was definitely the highlight of my visit. It was pretty hard to top that. So the next room over was geology and space, earth and planetary sciences, according to my fancy-dancy map here. So, as is the case with museums, things were under renovation. So a lot of the cases were empty, which happens sometimes, folks. You really should know that museums are a fluid institution. They are constantly changing. So don't be that person that comes to the museum to see one specific thing and it's not on display. It's not the fault of the museum, and it's not the fault of the frontline workers who are there to take your tickets. Don't yell at them. It's just bad timing, it is luck, and that's how it happens. So don't be a jerk. Museums do a pretty good job of making sure people know these things. Like even on my little map here, it'll say, hello, gallery under renovations. In most cases, museums do usually advertise these things on their website. However, some that have a collection search, like the MFA in Boston, you can search that on their website and it'll tell you whether or not it's on view. So some museums have those tools, not all of them do. I only know this because as a museum professional, I have been yelled at many a times because, why isn't this one thing here? I came from 2 continents over. Like, buddy, we need to take care of these pieces. These pieces need care. It might be inconvenient and we're sorry, but if you want this piece to last through the years, it's gotta go and it's gotta be taken care of. So I didn't mind so much because I knew and understand the situation. These things are necessary. So I was bummed, of course, to see empty cases, but you know, I understand the process that's behind it. It's important. And the things we saw there in the geology part was actually really cool. These were some beautiful geodes, beautiful crystals, beautiful rocks. I even got to see an interactive timeline about the history of the Earth. I can't name all the periods just off the top of my head, but it spanned the length of the room, and there were rocks where you could touch and like give them a good pet. And my last and final stop at the museum portion was the climate change room. Now, I did a lot of climate change stuff while I was at the New England Aquarium, did a lot of education, so I am big on making sure people know about climate change. So this exhibit was really in-depth and had a lot of amazing information that, you know, knowing Harvard was factual, was supported by, you know, multiple peer-reviewed studies. So I'm really impressed to see how they incorporated climate change into the exhibit. One of which was this big LED globe that actually showed different temperature patterns, and there was a voice that would explain how these temperature changes actually affect the weather, the crops, the fish migration of parts of the ocean, and how those affect the people. It really does a good job of giving you the why should you care about climate change, which 2 thumbs up for me. There were also little touch screens where you could answer questions, do true or false stuff. Of course, I was a total pro at it. Just saying. Yeah, that was about it. It was a pretty, traditional museum thing. A lot of reading, a lot of text. Yeah. And now, everybody's favorite part of the trip.
Exit through the gift shop. Harvard has a gift shop. It's got stuff for your kids, science and natural history themed, and cute tchotchke crafts on the other side. And it's all very expensive.
How would I rank the Harvard Natural History Museum as a whole? I would give them a 7.
So Harvard Natural History Museum gets a 7 for a lot of different reasons. It was not easy for me to find their mission on their website, and the website in general tend to have a lot of text, a lot of reading, a lot of links, a lot of stuff. The exhibits themselves were laid out really nicely. There were some tight corners. I think people in wheelchairs or with walkers might have a harder time. Getting to the museum was okay, and it does involve some walking because there's no real free parking nearby. Even if you take the train, you still have to cut through the campus. And the exhibit themselves were kind of inconsistent. I would have liked to see more things like the New England forest that were really immersive, because the staunch difference between just the animals on animals on animals compared to the ocean and the forest exhibits was significant to me as a museum professional. But in most cases, they were very interactive, definitely geared towards the older crowd. And in general, I did enjoy it.
I will admit the vastness of the collection, especially in the Museum of Comparative Zoology, was amazing. But given that Harvard is such a natural, intelligent, very vast, very Ivy League school, it doesn't surprise me that it was very, very, very academic-centered, not really fit for small children. There was really nothing about the museum as a whole and the collections as a whole that made me go, wow, above and beyond, super spectacular. It was a very traditional museum. Specimens in glass cases, little video screens, places where you sit and watch stuff. I'm not saying that it was a bad museum. By no means is it a bad museum. It's your pretty standard traditional museum. So if you like the really academic experience, maybe you're not bringing any small children with you, maybe older children, not toddlers, infant babies, maybe. I don't know. But it really is geared towards the slightly more older academic crowd. Alright everybody, that's going to do it for today. How would you rank the Harvard Natural History Museum? Leave me a comment below and don't forget to subscribe and check out my social medias @TheMuseumLover. Bye, take care!